Tonight he's going to talk about the yoga of openness and pull together the previous three sessions into a discussion of a daily practice and how that's important in continuing on with this work. So we'll have some more announcements after he's through, but without further ado, welcome Timothy Tate.
All right, happy May Day. Viva la revolución. Let's hear it for the workers. International Worker Day. Yeah, let's not forget the workers. Yeah. President Eisenhower tried to make it Law Day in the 50s to counterbalance this rabble-rousing worker revolution that May Day celebrates, but, you know, that didn't work too well. We're still here, still working away. It's a good thing. May Day, paying attention to the days that we've gathered together. We gathered on Ash Wednesday, and we've gathered when it was very cold outside. And as you can tell, it's not that, which is a wonderful thing. In Ireland, they call this day Bealtaine, the celebration of the tribes returning to the valleys to talk about their experiences that they had over the winter. They come to the well, the various wells, the springs, and drink that water and talk about what they experienced in the hills, in isolation, over the winter time, tending their flocks, keeping the hearth warm, whatever it was. They come on this day and celebrate that return. So welcome back into the community. I was fortunate enough to be in Ireland on a Bealtaine with my friend John Moriarty. And this is his face. As they say in Ireland, a face well lived in. And he has this to say about these days as a way of introducing us to this evening's talk, the yoga of openness. You won't understand this. Remember, we're not trying to understand anything during these talks. That's what the DVD's for, that's what the outline's for, that's what the essay's for, that's what the blog is for. That's a good thing. I just want you to be with me and go wherever you go in your mind. Don't try to make sense of this, especially if we're going to listen to an Irishman speak about how they perceive reality, which is very different than English. The Irish language has nothing to do with English. Nothing. It doesn't have anything to do with it. It's quite peculiar. But when it translates, it sounds something like this. Our time being so other than other world time, it isn't often in our time that a hazelnut falls into Nectan's well. Plop. But when it does, it is carried downstream, and if, passing from current to current, it is brought to your feet, and you eat it, then, though in no way altered, sight in you will be pure wonder. Can we even follow that? What a magical statement that just was. Then, seeing ordinary things in the ordinary way you had always seen them, sight in you will become more visionary than vision. Bealtaine, the celebration of return to the fold after the cold winter alone, and you never know when that hazelnut will flow into your feet and you'll pick it up, and suddenly you will see things very differently. And that's what we're talking about tonight. How do you stay open to the wonder of this mystery that we're experiencing right now? And if you're not experiencing it right now, why the hell not? Where did you get lost? That's what we're going to talk about, a way of helping you find your way home. So when I was walked down Pete's Hill tonight, and it was great from where we live up in the hills over there, and a paradox struck me, and that's what we're going to be talking about tonight as well, the tension of paradox. There's this young lady with her dog, an old dog, young lady. She was meandering down the trail, picking up debris, had a little bag, sticking it in, little this, a little that, papers, plastic bags, doggy bags filled with poo that had been tied up and left there. I don't quite understand that. Does anybody understand that? If you're going to go to the trouble.
We pick it up on the way back.
Thank you. That was a mystery I couldn't get. Okay.
It's very confusing when it's gone.
Yes. When you come back for it and it's gone, yeah. See? There's mystery everywhere. So there she was, picking up that sort of stuff. Thank you for that. And here were these great, huge earth-moving pieces of equipment ripping up Gaia right there for this new addition up there. Then across the street, was the farmer's field that has been there since I've been here, that will soon be a village for lots of people. And the farmer's out there harrowing, turning over the earth, which is what we talked about as a necessary move in the process of waking up, is you have to harrow your own earth, turn it over. So all that was going on, the wind was blowing like crazy. So that's what May Day was for me. So, and is for me, because we're still in it, and I'm going to talk a bit about the yoga of openness just to make it more interesting, perhaps. Thank you for turning out. This is the last lecture. You've stayed with me through some hard material. That last session was tough. I about didn't make it, and I know many of you were wounded and wandering around and dazed, and that's good. And you can see it in that DVD. Ego, persona, and character. 3 different vessels for 3 different journeys. So the idea of tonight is to give you some application, some practical tips about how to integrate the content I've talked about in the first 3 sessions into your daily life. If we don't do that, then we're just kind of narcissistic intellectuals, which is okay. I kind of like them. I'm one myself. It's okay. But we have to be careful, because Mr. Fries, Jerry, told me a dream that he had the other night, one of our elders, not last night, where I was dying. And all that was left was my head and some toes attached to the head. And people were coming into the hospital room and saying their goodbyes. So we better get this stuff out here before that happens. I asked if I looked good, and he said I didn't. Too bad. So, dreams. The 4th dream in the series is dreamed of mine, that we've had a dream each talk, and this 4th dream was dreamed about a mastermind man who would put people in situations that would require a choice between 2 options, one of which was right. A very cryptic dream. Dreamed about a mastermind man who would put people in situations that would require a choice between two options, one of which was right. And I'm going to pick that thread up when I finish the talk. But for now, just imagine that there is a right path. And the yoga of openness is a practice to stay on that path. I don't know what that path looks like for you, and I'm not prescribing a path for us to walk. I like to walk alone. I like to meet with you, but we're not talking about how to walk or where to walk to. It's simply that there is a path that you know inside yourself that is right. So, the yoga of openness, what is that? The yoga of openness is a set of daily practices that promotes a departure from adolescence into the mystery and paradox of maturity. The yoga of openness is a practice that facilitates this transition, which is very hard for us to make, both individually and culturally, from an adolescent state of mind into maturity. And by maturity, we again mean the capacity that we have as individuals to handle the paradoxes of life that are in opposition in our life. Simple paradoxes, like the paradox tonight. This lady picking up trash and the earth movers turning it all upside down and making trash everywhere. The paradox of recycling glass and a Suburban moving up that takes up all my recycling efforts for a year by its gas. That's a paradox. Many paradoxes. So the openness of yoga, or the yoga of openness, is the capacity to bear the tension of paradox. There are 4 elements to this yoga of openness that I'm going to talk about briefly tonight. Comprehending the 3 levels of reality that I've introduced in the writing and in the talks, along with these 4 elements, make up a matrix that facilitates this capacity to hold the tension of opposition. The 3 levels again are physical or literal, the masculine function; psychological, the feminine function; and mythic, the archetypal function. All 3 levels are in play at any given moment. I'm literally standing up here talking to you. You're having a psychological experience of that, and we're in a mythic moment. May Day in Bozeman, Montana. The 4 elements are as follows. How I greet the day determines the basis of my daily attitude. These are 4 assumptions that together will make up what I mean by the yoga of openness. We are not trying to be holy here. That never works. But we are emphasizing the value of a morning ritual that bridges the unconscious experience you had while asleep into the cognitive experience you are having while not asleep. I'm not going to say you're awake. That's too sacred a term. And we'll get to that in a moment. That's the point of all this practice, is to know what it feels like to be awake and how to sustain it. When you're not asleep, you're not awake. Just to play with that a little. So this transition from the night sea journey that we go into dream time and experience images the way in which images play in psyche and then enter the waking world, the cognitive world, the biocomputer brain cognition process sensory input world, that transition sets the tone for the day. I don't care how you make that transition. I'll get into my practice as an example of what I do. But I'm saying that unless you are deliberate with that transition, you, as they say, get out of the wrong side of the bed. What's the matter with you? Did you get out of the wrong side of the bed? How come you're so cranky? Well, if we don't finish the dream time in a ritual way, just kind of lying there, allowing it to come into place, and have a way to transition through our body, and that will be the yoga I'm going to be talking about, of stretching into this form. You've been dormant, you've been in a kind of Shavasana corpse thing, or if you're like me, you've been twitching and thrashing all night, whatever your style is. You know, you're now waking up and coming into the biocomputer world, not the world of psyche. And how you do that is important. One of my favorite ways of doing it in terms of what we have to do in modern reality, because we usually have to have an alarm to get us up. That's one of my main functions of the cell phone. I love that. You can set it for Monday through Friday, and it has a little tone. Ding! My daughter's helping me understand how to use the cell phone, and we're making progress. Texting is kind of cool. If you haven't done that yet, it's a whole new language. But that aside. One of my favorite ways is captured in the movie, one of my favorite movies, Vanilla Sky. It's the morning scene when Tom Cruise wakes up in his slick Manhattan apartment. I don't know if anybody has seen this, but please do if you haven't. And the radio's playing. And the song on the radio is Radiohead singing Everything in Its Right Place. Nice. Of course, he goes out into the world and nothing is like he thinks it should be. It's all different. Manhattan has no cars. So, how I greet the day determines the basis of my daily attitude. Find a way to greet the dawn. That's what we've been talking about. When I have mentioned greetthegreeter.com, our blog, when we talk about facing east and waking up, it's about how you greet the dawn. It's not just a problem to get up and get going. First assumption. Second, consciously breathing expands my capacity to hold tension. So let's revisit our breath. How are we doing? Let's take some breath. It's a little warm in here. That's okay. Open the door, but the noise comes in and we're trying to do a production here. So we want to have that quiet, but just breathe for a moment. Loosen up. It's okay. Breathe. It's the first thing you do. It's the last thing you'll do. It's fun. Hard to do, isn't it? Get self-conscious, get a little buzzy. That's okay. Breath is a tool we apply to living with the tension of conflict and paradox in our daily life so that we can mature. Connecting the inhale with the exhale as a conscious daily meditation. This is not rocket science. I'm talking about a very simple move, and that is having a conscious sense of your inhale. As it fills your chest, it reaches a point where you can't take any more in. That's a meditative point. And then it releases. and at the bottom is a still moment. If you are consciously breathing, you are not at the mercy of your thinking function. The practice of meditation is a full-time practice. It's not something you do, although that's a wonderful way to practice it as well. It's the capacity to stay conscious about your breath. We know the value of that when we exercise. The Western word for prana, in some ways, is endorphins. We have the runner's high, the experience we get when we're really working out. We're getting aerobicized and we have a high. Prana is a Sanskrit term that refers to the capacity to consciously breathe and access that same kind of mysterious vitality. I'm not hearing anything out here. Try it. Jeez. Okay. Connecting the inhale with the exhale is a conscious daily meditation. It is life, not a life aid. Okay? So whenever you're walking, whenever you're driving, whenever you're doing business, whenever you're working on a hard problem, whenever you are in a tension-filled moment with your spouse, that's the time to breathe. That's what maturity sounds like. Immaturity is holding our breath. We started that as kids and fell over. So, on purpose, yeah, it's kind of a rush. Let's all try that. Let's stand up and hold our breath and fall over. That'd be a moment. So it's very simple. It'll never catch on. It doesn't cost anything. It's not complex. You don't have to go to workshops for it. How will that ever work? And when you do have a full breath, as we've talked about before, people ask you what's wrong. Are you okay? It's just loony. 2 items so far in the practice of the yoga of openness. How you greet the day matters, and conscious breathing. 3rd element. Physically stretching yields a posture of openness to independent reality. Okay, here we go. In my first lecture, I made the case for an independent reality. Made the case that perception is not reality. Perception, how we perceive, is not reality. It's kind of a radical statement, but it's an important one just to sit with. And there is an independent reality that you can access. The point of this lecture series. How do you access independent reality? I'm saying the element here that's coming into play is stretching. We have that in common with birds. They stretch before they fly. It's, again, very simple. Stretching is all I'm talking about. How we stretch into our body, and I believe yoga is a fine way to learn how to stretch into your body. Low impact. And I'm doing this all the time, right? The reason I'm doing this is there is a palpable, tangible feel to independent reality. It's streaming through the universe. It's not made up. It's quantifiable. It has many names. The Christians use the term Holy Spirit. The Sanskrit folks use the term prana. The scientists would say radioactive emissions from the Big Bang that are measurable and expanding. Independent reality has no content to it. It's not descriptive. It's not going to tell you what to do. Independent reality is a vital source that maturity accesses. And the capacity to stretch, to be open physically, gives you a bit of an advantage. If you're closed and tight, you can't experience independent reality. It'll be all through and around you, but you won't have a conscious experience of it. Four more points. Then we'll have a little chat. So, stretching is both for birds. I'm just wrapping up that third point. Stretching is, I like this, so I'm going to say it, because I get to do it. It's my damn talk. Okay. Stretching is both for birds who are about to take flight and humans, and this is the dictionary definition, which I love, who are about to straighten into one's full height or length. I like that. We have a lot of, that whole sense, of stretching and opening up to your full stature. Next time you're in the line of the grocery store, just do that. Yeah, just, do it right here if you wouldn't. Thank you. Some of you are, just, that's a beautiful thing. Stretching opens you up. Yoga of openness. How do you open up when we're afraid and conditioned and worried and driven and busy? How do you do that? That's the paradox I'm talking about. The adolescent posture to all that I just described, in other words, an active life, is to resist, to fight, to be afraid, to get rid of it, to try to get around it, to find a way through it, to figure out a plan. The maturity I'm talking about tonight is opening up to independent reality, putting the thinking function down, being quiet enough to hear what comes to you. Okay, the fourth point. Dreams inform me of my character and destiny. Character is a way of expressing and responding to reality with a capital R, independent reality. Dreams are the way in which you can see into your own connection to independent reality. They give you visuals every night. Since it's not presented in the way that you think, as we've discussed before, dreams are confusing. It's a foreign language because it's the language of the images. It's imaginal. If you try to think your way through a dream, it's very difficult. But if you can see, if you can learn how to see by remembering your dreams, you will be able to see in the way that John Moriarty talked about. You will be able to see where you are. How can we know reality with a capital R if we are addicted to reality? Through our nighttime dreams. That's the way through that riddle. We're addicted to literal reality, which has been driven by a patriarchal, logical, intelligent, intellectual approach for 5,000 years. We have had 150 years of psychological understanding. And now what I'm suggesting, it's time to learn how to have a mythic or archetypal or mature relationship with reality. And let down or let go of this addiction to this. It'll kill you. It's the ultimate addiction. To think that one dimension, literal reality is it. Three more points. It's warm in here. How you doing? It's a full moon. It's Bealtaina, May 1st. Spring is just going nuts, and here we are in a room listening to stuff we don't understand. That's so cool. And it's a Tuesday night as well. So, good for you. Again, I wouldn't be doing this if I didn't think a lot rested on you understanding it. That's why we've done this comprehensive approach. And we'll talk a bit about how this is going to take form in the future. But one way it's going to take form is after these 4 talks, and if you review this material with the tools we give you and all of that, we'll get back together in the fall or in the winter and work the material. You'll have read it, you'll have digested, you'll have talked about it. We'll get back together in a small group setting for those who are interested and really dive into it. I can't tell you how important what I'm trying to get across is. And we're going to say it through tonight and then lay it down. So, moving from daily habits to daily rituals is the next point. The yoga of openness carries us through the day in a more sacred way, no matter how profane our day might appear. Living life as a ritual practice. Very cool. I love the Tibetan monks who can live in the world and when they're attacked by Chinese, throw themselves at them and say, I'm going to say no to your attack. In other words, there's a whole way of seeing life as a ritual experience. A certain fierceness, a certain aliveness, a certain vitality, a certain engagement is the benefit of being open to independent reality. There are some people in this room who have spent a great deal of time in nature, in the woods, in the mountains, away from culture and civilization. When we go into nature, she blesses us with what I'm talking about. You experience it. It's a natural high, we say. When we have habits, we're burdened by a routine that is unconscious. We slug through the day, just think, I can't wait until Friday, I can't wait to get through the day. We're in our adolescent state. Everything is hard. I'm resenting what's happening. I'm protesting what I'm experiencing. Life is a bitch. I'm angry. I'm a little worked up. If I meet the right person on the street, I can work out a lot of my anger. Tight. Tight. That's a habit. Opening up through greeting the day consciously, through having a way that you've learned to stretch, to consciously breathe, and to pay attention to your dreams, gives you a chance to shift from habit reality into ritual or sacred experience. It can happen in a jail cell. It can happen in the IRS office. That would be tough. In other words, shifting from a mundane, profane habit reality that is driven by adolescent issues and dynamics and forces into a mature, open capacity to hold the paradox of life is the practice of the yoga of openness. You figure out your postures. That's your responsibility. I'm saying that unless we have such a practice, we're locked into a profane, unconscious, habitual life. And those of you who know me, I say this from time to time. Right now, we're spinning at 17,000 miles an hour, going through space at 65,000 miles an hour. Right now. It's kind of fun. We're on this spaceship that's just going crazy. And we're using up its fuel at an amazing rate, aren't we? So, I'm not trying to be I'm not trying to be anything. So, the next point. Union of opposites. What's an example of what the hell I'm talking about? What is this union of opposites that I'm talking about? The best way to talk about the union of opposites is the union of the masculine and the feminine. That's the core paradox. That's what the yoga of openness is in service to. There's nothing more paradoxical than a man and a woman trying to love each other and create harmonious union, if you hadn't noticed. No one has figured that out. We understand the feminine principle and the masculine principle as oppositional, paradoxical forces, both within your own psyche and in the body of a woman or man. There is nothing more challenging than the union of those opposites. You can't be adolescent and pull that off. It requires maturity, and we all have battle wounds. We all have horror stories. We've all been beat up by the attempt to have this union of opposites. So this paradox that I'm talking about can best be understood through your own story of how difficult that is. Personally, the movie that came to mind to exhibit this and represent this ultimate paradox was, for me, the film called Rabbit Proof Fence. Some of you have heard it or read it or seen it. It's an Australian film about the young women of an Aboriginal village who were taken by the English fascist pigs for their own good, to be enculturated. Hundreds and hundreds of miles away from their village of strong women. So the masculine took the feminine away from the earth and the mother to train it and educate it for its own good. That's the masculine principle. And the feminine principle held the grief ritual and held on to the rabbit-proof fence wire. These old women, these Aboriginal women, transmitting that energy to their children, their young women, who were trying to find their way home. Are you with me here? This is brilliant. This is what I mean by the masculine and the feminine. Not that the masculine is always destructive, but it's always insisting that you do things for your own good. It's always telling you in your brain how to be right, what to do, how to be perfect, how you should handle this. It's always thinking, trying to get a better way. That's the masculine principle. And the feminine principle is in the depths of the earth, in the chaos, in the intuition, in the feeling tone, in the nurturing, in the defenselessness, the vulnerability. And here's this fence that goes all the way across Australia that these women are holding on to, bringing their children home. And what makes it beautiful, this is a true story. And they got taken back. They found their way home, they got taken back. They ran away again and came home again. These guys had all the equipment, all the data, all the dogs, all the stuff, and these girls found their way home. Yeah. Oh, I figured out why the first DVD didn't work, by the way, for many of you. We had technical problems with that information. It just dawned on me. I was saying that information age was over and dawn was happening. Of course that one's not going to work. Just a sideline. Okay, I'm going to wrap it up here now, and then we'll have some questions. Thanks for bearing with me here. So my last auditory dream, so I had 4 dreams when asked to do this series of talks that I've referenced and started each session with, and I've had 4 auditory dreams over the years 1990 to 1997. The first one was Greet the Greeter. The second one had to do, God, can I even remember this one now? The second one was The Shadow. Square Thy Soul. The third one was Dross. And the fourth one was, again, this Yahweh-esque voice going, Jacob Burma. What? So, okay, I speak German. I can go there. Jacob Burma. J-A-K-O-B-B-O-E-H-M-E. So I went to my collection of Jung, his volumes, because if anybody knew what Jacob Burma was, he would. And there it was. This cat lived in 1512. It's just crazy. It really is. And he said a couple things that I'm going to get to right now to end this kind of talk with. I had lots of other quotes, but I don't think I can go there right now. I think this is working okay. So, Jacob Burma, developed this principle in the 1600s. He taught that the interaction between these two principles of the divine wrath and love produced the creative impulse out of which the manifold universe evolved. Stick with me. Moreover, the two cooperative forces did not cease to be productive after the universe's creation, for both are necessary also to sustain it. All things consist of positive and negative aspects. The divine, yes or no. Now you remember my dream. Mastermind saying there's a right way. Here comes this arcane text talking about this principle that I'm going to end with, that really wraps up what I've been trying to get across this whole time. And I'm going to read that so I can get clear on it. But, oh, by the way, his first book that he wrote when he had this union of opposite gold experience was called Aurora, which I thought was pretty fun. I didn't know that until 2 days ago when I was researching for this talk. That gives me goosebumps are good. Goosebumps is that vital energy I'm talking about. You have peak experiences, you have goosebumps, you have a moment. That's what I mean by independent reality. Kind of sizzles, kind of makes you a little weak. That knocked me out. Oh, and they said about his book, check this out. Expressed his insights in an abstruse, oracular style, this work aroused profound interest among a small circle of followers, but it provoked heated opposition and hatred by the authorities. I said, does that sound familiar? And of course, this essay will be on our blog as of tomorrow, so you can read what I'm talking about here. Here's the principle. The practice of the yoga of openness is dedicated to increasing the clarity and connection to independent reality. And that this is a trustworthy source. Don't trust the intellect alone. There is another source, and I'm calling that independent reality, which the yoga of openness opens you up to. It both informs and creates. Once you have a connection to this voltage, you know the difference between it being on or off. The yes or no. That's what I'm saying. Not what to believe, or not the right thing to do, or not how it should be. Not that right or wrong. Once you connect to that voltage, you know if you are or you're not. You know when something is it or not. That's your task, is to know the difference and to have a practice that allows you to be open to that distinction. In his book of poetry, William Stafford has his poem, and I'm going to end with that, and then we'll have some questions perhaps, and then Betsy will come up here and talk about some housekeeping details and give us a wee song. This is by William Stafford. And those of you who have been with me in the past in men's work or otherwise might have heard this, and I'd like to share it with you tonight. It's called A Ritual to Read to Each Other. If you don't know the kind of person I am, and I don't know the kind of person you are, a pattern that others made may prevail in the world, and following the wrong God home, we may miss our star. For there is many a small betrayal in the mind, a shrug that lets the fragile sequence break, sending with shouts the horrible errors of childhood, storming out to play through the broken dike. And as elephants parade holding each elephant's tail, but if one wanders, the circus won't find the park, I call it cruel, and maybe the root of all cruelty, to know what occurs, but not recognize the fact. The yes or no of it. I call it cruel, and maybe the root of all cruelty, evil. To know what occurs, but not recognize the fact. And so I appeal to a voice, to something shadowy, a remote, important region in all who talk. Though we could fool each other, we should consider lest the parade of our mutual life get lost in the dark. For it is important that awake people be awake, or a breaking line may discourage them back to sleep. The signals we give, yes or no or maybe, should be clear. The darkness around us is deep. William Stafford. All right. Thanks for bearing with me there. Good one.
Above the mountains, the geese turn into the light again, painting their black silhouettes on an open sky. Sometimes everything has to be inscribed across the heavens so you can find the one line already written inside you. Sometimes it takes a great sky to find that first bright and indescribable wedge of freedom in your own heart. Sometimes with the bones of the black sticks left when the fire has gone out, someone has written something new in the ashes of your life. You are not leaving, you are arriving.